Good morning, fight fans, and welcome back to another episode of Mike's MMA Picks Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown Show for UFC Charlotte. Got the coffee in hand. Hope everybody is having a pleasant morning and they've taken care of their Mother's Day shopping. We've got 11 fights to look forward to. Only 4 of the 11 matchups headed our way on this festive May morning are lined to end inside the distance. I think we might see an over in that spot, but we're going to find out soon enough. Soon enough, my brothers. Let's chat briefly about the 11 fights on this beautiful fight morning. I want to welcome everybody to the show. We're going to talk about a ladies matchup at 135 pounds, where we have Jessica Rose Clark, who has struggled mightily in recent years. She's become more of a wrestler than anything else at this juncture. Robotic in nature on the feet, plods, stiff. Looks like she spends a lot of time in the weight room, and coming back, she's had a number of injuries throughout the years, and she's taking on a Tainara Lisboa, who is a bit of an unknown. Both of these fighters this is what we refer to as low-level women's mixed martial arts, my brothers. You watch Lisboa, and she looks impressive from the footage, but the level of competition is suspect in my professional opinion, and I would recommend grabbing a mimosa for the wife and enjoying your fight morning rather than placing a wager on this specific bout. When it comes down to it, and you have to make a pick here, the pick's going to be Lisboa. I do not trust Jessica Rose Clark. She's somebody you cannot trust at this stage in her career. This is a 35-year-old human being who has faced defeat 8 separate times, and it's not like she's fighting world beaters. So the pick is going to be Lisboa. Second fight of the night, where we have Gabe Green taking on Bryan Battle. I posted a screenshot yesterday of 3 fighters who looked horrific on the scales. And you know what? Bryan Battle, he looked like he was hurting real bad on the scale there. He missed weight. And this is a fighter who typically competes at 185 pounds. I know he's made weight in the past at welterweight, but not very impressive on the scale. And you have to be concerned about the gas tank and how that's going to affect him headed into this bout against Gabe Green, who his fight versus Garry, that didn't look too shabby. Gabe Green, 11-4 overall record. He's a fighter who is not going to blow you away with charisma or flashy techniques. He's a meat and potatoes type of fighter who's coming in as the -140 betting favorite here. In this spot, you have Bryan Battle, who does have a significant reach advantage. And initially, if Bryan Battle was looking spry out here, if the weight cut went as planned, I would be more apt to lean towards Bryan Battle's way. But as I watched the tape and I saw that there aren't many chinks in the armor of Gabe Green, he's a fighter who's going to fight hard for your money until the end. I know the Lanez fight, we saw what happened there. He tends to pour it on late in fights. And the Fakhretdinov fight that we saw Bryan Battle in left a lot to be desired. I know he performed well on the Ultimate Fighter show, and perhaps there is a higher ceiling than we initially thought for Brian Battle. But answer me this, my brothers. What weight class is Brian Battle going to reach his potential? Because it doesn't look like it's going to be welterweight. It looks like we're looking at a middleweight fighter who is struggling out there. Now, Gabe Green is going to be the pick. I know he's sitting at minus 140. I'm not touching this line because I do realize that Battle, granted, I know he had a fight-ending knockout a couple of fights ago, but I don't see him replicating that in this spot in the larger octagon. But give me Gabe Green in a hard-fought affair. Looking forward to that matchup. The fannies should be in the seats. By the way, if you're headed to the fights this morning, have a great time. I want to wish everybody a pleasant, safe commute to the venue in Charlotte. Let's kick things off again in the third fight, where we have Ji Young Kim taking on Mandy Boom. Mandy Boom had to pull out in the last iteration of this matchup that never came to fruition. Boom, 7-2 overall fighter who, man, you look at, if you're losing to Victoria Leonardo, you have some things to worry about. And then on the other side of the fight, you've got Ji Young Kim, who's 9-6-2 overall, a fiery Korean fighter who is sitting at minus 230 at the betting window, a fighter who is coming off of some controversial decision losses. And she's somebody who, if the fight's at range and she can land 1-2s, she's in the fight. But if this fight ends up on the mat, or there's fighters are changing levels, there's a clinch affair taking place against the cage, then all bets are off. I'll be picking Ji Young Kim here, but let's be honest. This is another low-level women's mixed martial arts bout. I think after this bout on the card, you should see a rise in the roar of the crowd as we continue this journey and we look at Cody Stamen taking on Douglas Silva de Andrade. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the comments here. We've got Lou. Lou, I hope you're enjoying your soccer game that you're watching, or as some folks refer to it as football. It's a pleasant morning. Grateful dude. Thank you for tuning in, checking this show out live as we launch into all that is the fight day for UFC Charlotte. Mike, good morning, sir. Pleasure. James, excellent. Excellent to see you here. Flea, very nice of you. Donnie, welcome aboard, sir. Let's continue this journey as we speak about Cody Stamen and Douglas Silva de Andrade. Now, this is a catchweight bout. A lot of folks were thrown off by that, but if you watch Cody Stamen's interviews in the lead up to this card, you saw that he mentioned he was hoping that Douglas Silva de Andrade would be open to a catchweight bout. Both of these guys, massive bantamweights, and doesn't shock me that this fight was booked at 140 pounds. Now, both of these guys look like they struggled a bit on the scale, even to make that weight 140 pounds. Now, you watch both of these fighters. I got to give Mr. Stamen a little bit more credit here. He's a very technical fighter, both standing and on the feet. We saw against Song Yadong and others. He has the ability to cause folks problems on the mat, but we typically see him standing up, fighting at range. I know the Lacerda fight, we saw his cardio falter, and in this spot, you look at goes to a decision around minus 176 or so. Douglas Silva de Andrade, I go back to that fight against Marlon Chito Vera, and the guy in Belém was a sight to behold. The cardio held up for 15 minutes. He was pushing a pace. Now he's closing in on 38 years of age, and you see the weight that comes out off of his face during weight cuts, and it's incredible how he's able to rehydrate so much as well. Both of these fighters, I suspect, will be at least 155 pounds when they step into the octagon. When it comes down to breaking down this fight, much more technical fighter is Cody Stamen, and you watch the way he's going to push a pace here. He's going to force Douglas Silva de Andrade to empty his tank, and I know Douglas Silva de Andrade has come back like a phoenix after being on the verge of defeat many times against Said Nurmagomedov and many other fighters. And both of these fighters have taken a loss to Said Nurmagomedov. By the way, who remembers that Said Nurmagomedov versus Jonathan Martinez bout recently? So the pick here is going to be Cody Stamen, more versatile fighter, is somebody I feel a bit more confident trusting in this matchup. And at some point, the wheels are going to fall off for Douglas Silva de Andrade. I know that it is impossible to outrun Father Time, no matter how hard you try. And we've seen others like Fabricio Verdum and others try to accomplish that feat, but I can't pick Douglas Silva de Andrade. I know he has many different knockouts on his resume, but I am going to be fading Douglas Silva de Andrade, and we got in on Cody Stamen at -144. Next up, we have Carl Williams taking on Chase Sherman. This is a fight that was rebooked. Carl Williams coming in with an 8-1 overall record. Hasn't fought the best competition in the world. Williams took part in PFL at one point in time. Now, he's 33 years old. He's coming in looking to wrestle, looking to put Chase Sherman on the mat. Rinse and repeat. Chase Sherman, 16-11 overall record. Also 33 years of age. You look at the reach, very similar, but I don't see this fight playing out much on the feet. I think that Chase Sherman should get grounded here. It would not surprise me to see him get pounded out. Poor Chase Sherman. He's fought so many times inside of the octagon, and you want to watch him on the feet. I know Williams can't or typically won't excel there, but Chase Sherman's head looks like it's headed back like a Pez dispenser every time he gets hit. The lack of head movement has caused him fits. So the pick here is going to be Carl Williams. There's a clear path to victory as far as the grappling goes. And you also wonder what took place behind the scenes for this fight to get pulled in previous weeks. I mean, we've seen Chase Sherman do this against Romanov and others where he signs on the dotted line and then has pulled out a fight. So I'm concerned for Chase Sherman. I'll be picking Carl Williams and for him to do so inside the distance. Next up, we've got Matt Brown taking on Court McGee. Yes, this fight takes place at 170 pounds, welterweight. And you watch both of these fighters, they hit the mark on the scale. Watch Matt Brown in the lead up to this fight. He's been training with Mark the Hammer Coleman, and I know that that's been a staple of his camp in the past. But Coleman is now putting in work. Mark, are you planning to make a comeback to the octagon? I question that. Mark Coleman is one of the pioneers of the sport. I've met him at Pride 33, Pride Fighting Championships. And Matt Brown, 23-19 overall record. He's coming close to a 500 record. This is a fighter who, on his best days, was competing near the top of the welterweight division. Has, I believe, the most welterweight knockouts on the roster. He's a fighter who is going to be throwing knees, going to be throwing elbows, but it comes at a cost, and the gas tank could potentially be a problem here if this fight gets extended. Court McGee on the other side of the fight, 21-11 overall record, intelligent fighter inside of the octagon, is going to look to grapple, won't blow you away with his power like Matt Brown does, but at -225, I think the line is a little bit wide here. There's always the potential for Matt Brown to end the fight via strikes. And if this fight hits the mat, we've seen Carlos Condit I mean, the carcass of Carlos Condit beat both of these fighters. So look at the age, too. Matt Brown, 42 years of age. And Court McGee is no spring chicken either. I'll be picking Court McGee here. But as soon as this fight hits the mat, I would be looking for a live betting opportunity. The pick is going to be Court McGee. LP, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you joining the show. Professor Chaos, great to see you. I hope you had a wonderful time last week at UFC 288. CT, hello. Great to see you. Let's charge our way through the rest of this morning breakdown show where we have another fighter who looked horrific on the scales. We had Alex Morono, who is 22-8. He leaves a lot to be desired on the tape. When you watch the way this guy performs, he's sloppy. He's got a great corner, though. That's the Team Fortis corner. They do great work. And there's a little bit of anxiety when you're fading Team Fortis because they put together solid game plans and their corner is extremely loud. You hear them on the broadcast, most cards. And you look at the other side of the fight, Tim Means, who has, one of my favorite all-time fighters. Tim Means, he can do it all. He can excel on the mat. He's got beautiful, crisp striking, crisp boxing, can throw the elbows in the clinch. But now look at his age, 39 years of age, 32-14 overall record. A fighter who, when the going gets tough, Tim Means typically gets going. Now, when you go back to my literally thousands of track bets over the years, the largest stake I've ever placed was against, was Tim Means versus Ricky Rainey. And we ended up cashing that ticket. And I'm typically a person who, you look at the way I've staked throughout 2023 and the past few years, my highest amount risked is 2.5 units so far this year. So I'm not a believer in risking 15, 20 plus % of the bankroll at any time. Looking to pick my spots. And in this spot, you have Tim Means, who is a seasoned veteran who put in the work on the scales. And you look at Morono. It's interesting. Morono ended up making weight, but looked horrible. And he's coming off of a knockout loss to Ponzinibbio, but looked great. And that fight was on short notice. He looked great during the fight and was listening to his corner, and then just, man, it seemed like he was going for the kill and wasn't concerned about what was coming back at him. And damn, Ponzinibbio laid him out. And you saw the way his face was contorted in a way where there was no real way you could protest that stoppage. But Morono, since he was so out of it, he tried to protest that stoppage. Now, this matchup it's a very close matchup. I'll say that. And I have trouble picking a side here. I think the odds are way off. I do not feel confident picking either side of this bout, but I'm leaning towards Tim Means. I think that the knockout loss for Morono really is a concern here. And then you look at Max Griffin and the way he was able to earn a decision, and it shouldn't have been a split decision against Tim Means last time out. Tim Means, yes, he is regressing. Yes, nearing the end of his professional mixed martial arts career. I'll be picking Tim Means, but I don't trust Alex Morono at all, and especially this weight cut. That is a major issue for me. I hope the coffee is flowing for everybody this morning, all around the world, wherever you find yourself. Grab a fresh cup of Joe and sit down and enjoy this festive fight morning with me. I appreciate that. Next up, we've got Carlos Ulberg taking on Ihor Poteria. Poteria is coming in at plus 340. This is a fighter who, we talk about the fighters feasting off of the carcass of other opponents, and Poteria was able to do that against the almighty Mauricio Shogun Rua. And on this beautiful fight morning, I have to make a clear pick for Carlos Ulberg, but he can't stand around and not be concerned about what's coming back at him, because Poteria, one thing about him, he's extremely aggressive. And we know that there are no certainties in this game. Time and time again, people call it variance, what have you. But the reality is you have two human beings engaged in combat inside of a caged octagon, and they're 4-ounce gloves. There is a potential for anyone to get knocked out. No one is invincible inside of the UFC octagon. That may be put on a t-shirt at some point shortly, my brothers. But you watch this matchup play out, and fight doesn't go the distance is sitting at minus 400. And I believe that is there. It's lined at that specific number for a reason, and it's likely because Ulberg will be putting Poteria's lights out late in this fight. But then you look at the odds here. The inside the distance odds seem to be steamed to a point where some of these lines are unplayable. So if you have an angle on this bout, cheers to you if you feel confident in that angle. I do feel confident in Ulberg winning here, but not going out of my way to play a minus 425 favorite in a bout that takes place at light heavyweight. Next up, let's continue this journey where we have Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod, who has been exposed in recent bouts. He has had trouble making weight and did so here, but it took him multiple attempts. And he's taking on Ian Garry, who is none of these fighters have a reach advantage here. There's a massive discrepancy in age. I go back to the Daniel Rodriguez fight, and I know that when he arrived onto the scene, he was criminally underrated. He does have a jiu-jitsu, I believe it's 10th Planet background, and has had some success inside of the octagon against Tim Means. And he's a mean fighter when he's inside of the octagon. When he's on, his striking's crisp, and he can throw straight punches with the best of them. Problem is, this is a fighter who the wheels are starting to fall off for Daniel Rodriguez. You can see it. He's looking very flabby out there. His physique is starting to change. He's in his late 30s. He's been cracked. Now, he hasn't been put out, but he's been cracked a number of times. And go back to the Li Jingliang post-fight interview, and he was saying that he was rocked. I believe every shot that he was hit with was rocking him. And I know, actually, we cashed on Daniel Rodriguez against Kevin Lee. And Kevin Lee, is he making the UFC return? If you know, put that in the comments section there. I'm not sure. But we hit on Daniel Rodriguez against Kevin Lee, I believe. That was a number of years ago. And you look at this fight, Ian Garry is a fighter who if you want to catch a young fighter and take him out, somebody who's a prospect, you have to do it on the come up before they are shoring up the holes in their respective game. And of course, you watch Ian Garry, he seems to leave himself open to strikes. The way he's standing inside of the octagon and defending himself, he's very offensive minded, and that could be the potential for an upset, but I'm not so sure about that here. I believe that Ian Garry is the rightful favorite here. I just don't feel comfortable playing him at minus 300 or over that in this matchup. I think that's a little bit, I'm not going to say wide, but anything can happen here. In this spot, though, I think Ian Garry's going to tune Daniel Rodriguez up and look the part in this matchup. I think that he has the ability to take advantage of a fighter who is nearing the end of his professional career in Daniel Rodriguez. And as I've said before, the wheels appear to be falling off for Daniel Rodriguez. You watch the way he faltered down the stretch against Neil Magny. The Dwight Grant fight was another concern. I was on Daniel Rodriguez against Dwight Grant. I acknowledge what took place in that matchup, and I understand folks are trying to cash an underdog ticket in this spot, but I think your best bet would be to pass here because Ian Garry looks legitimate, at least from a skill perspective, and we haven't seen him perform that much on the mat. And from what I've heard and some of the fight footage I've seen, not necessarily in the UFC, that he does have a solid ground game, and the guy is long, man. I think he's going to use that to his advantage, and he's got great cardio. And that's where Daniel Rodriguez, I believe, is going to falter here. So the pick is going to be Ian Garry. Next up, we're already at the co-main of the event of the evening. Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker coming in with a 20-7 overall record. He's a minus 115 betting favorite. And you look at the other side of the fight, you've got Anthony Smith, who is sitting at minus 105 right now. These are the odds over at DraftKings. So this fight is interesting. I see a lot of people on Anthony Smith and a lot of people making some significant sized or risking a lot of units on Anthony Smith here. And they're talking about on the timeline the durability of Anthony Smith being one of his talking points and one of his strengths. But am I not out of my mind here? I mean, what's going on? When you look at Anthony Smith's record, this is a fighter who has 14 losses inside the distance, 10 of which have come via knockout or TKO. That is a major concern. I know that Johnny Walker, his chin has not looked great, and he's been knocked silly across the octagon and knocked out basically multiple times on the regional scene in one fight. But how can you bank on Anthony Smith's durability when Glover Teixeira put him through the meat grinder and could have ended that fight many, many times? He was apologizing for what he was doing to the man inside of the octagon. And you realize now that Anthony Smith has been finished 14 separate times. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Johnny Walker's been knocked out 4 times in his professional mixed martial art career. So, you know what? As volatile as this matchup may appear, and I know that Johnny Walker's back to taking risks, I'm going to be picking Johnny Walker in this spot. I understand that the more well-rounded, more patient fighter, although let's retract that statement to a certain degree, because we did see Johnny Walker go 5 rounds against Thiago Santos in a main event. And we also saw Thiago Santos go 5 rounds against John Jones a number of years ago. So, by the way, Thiago Santos suffered PFL, failed drug test. So, heart goes out to Thiago Santos. Hope he's doing well these days, and his professional mixed martial arts career may be coming to an end. But I'll be picking in this matchup Johnny Walker. His explosiveness, I know it's a double-edged sword where it can come back to haunt him, but the pick is going to be Johnny Walker in this fight. I just don't trust Anthony Smith, and he may walk away with a victory. I'm not going to trust him. Moise, great to see you, sir. Welcome aboard. Liam, you know, esta es como lo hacemos, as they say. This is how we do it. I believe that was Drew Dober's walkout song last weekend inside of the Prudential Center. Great venue there. And Marcus, you like Johnny Walker in the spot over Anthony Smith. The size advantage for Walker is huge. Walker over the older Smith, who I could see retiring if he loses. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to see that. So, yes, I'll be picking Johnny Walker in that matchup also. Should be an interesting bout. Could be a volatile matchup also. Now, let's talk about the main event of the evening, where we have Jailton Almeida against Jair Rozenstruik. I've been on Rozenstruik in past matchups. He's come on late in fights. He does have fight-ending power at any moment of the bout. We saw against Alistair Overeem. Overeem was winning that fight handily and then just got blasted across the octagon. And that's one thing about Rozenstruik is he always has that fight-ending power. And remember Rozenstruik against the diaper-wearing fighter early in his UFC career was manhandled on the mat and struggled as far as a get-up game goes. And against Almeida here, Jailton Almeida has the skills and the knowledge and the game plan to dominate this fight once it hits the mat. But he's going to have to close distance here, and he has to do that effectively. And if Almeida does not close the distance effectively, he could be met by a heavy-handed strike that would put out anybody. So you look at fight doesn't go the distance in this main event, sitting at minus 1,100, minus 1,200 or so. That it's crazy. There might be value in that line, believe it or not. That's crazy because this fight should end early. Almeida has a tendency to play with his food on the mat. That's the only thing that could potentially extend this bout, but the submission defense, you have Rozenstruik's inability to fight the hands. I think that also is going to come back to haunt him here. And I see Almeida winning this fight via submission, but I'm not going out of my way to play a minus 425 favorite in this spot, especially against a heavy-hitting heavyweight fighter at this stage in his career. And you look at the age of these fighters. Rozenstruik, 35 years old. Every time I watch him fight, he's a pretty athletic specimen too. Reminds me of, I say this every time, Leonard Fournette out there, the way he moves around. I watched one of his training videos while he's running. I wouldn't be surprised if you threw shoulder pads on him and put him in the Tampa Bay backfield, what he would do out there. But in this spot, I'm going to be picking Jailton Almeida to win, and to win inside the distance via submission. The challenge is, though, sometimes when you cannot get the submission, there's you have the opportunity to pound out your opponent, and Almeida could potentially do that. So the pick is going to be Jailton Almeida, and inside the distance, I'll be picking him to win. I want to wish everybody a tremendous fight morning. Thank you for tuning in. Go get what's yours. Have a great day, and let's get ready for an early card. Remember to get the Mother's Day shopping done early, and have yourself a splendid rest of the weekend. So cheers to you, and let's get after it. Have a great day.